When I was a teenager looking for something to read, I tried to find stories set on and based around airships, and I sincerely hoped to find books that revolved more around at least some realism concerning how a society might evolve differently from our own when influenced by the ability to fly in a similar way to how we sail the oceans. Kenneth Opel's Airborn wasn't actually the first story I found in this vein, but it still has its own charming aesthetic, not simply in the style of writing and world building, but also in the people and implied societal dynamics written between the lines. In other words, I came for the airships, and I stayed for the wonderful world Opel presented. If I had gotten strictly what I wanted, the Airship book would have been a fictional work about the technology and engineering of an industry that really never came to be. It would have been hollow of narrative and pathos like any encyclopedia on technology. But Opel's story of young characters growing up and finding adventure in this world makes the setting seem more alive and aspiring, like it can be more than the sum of the tired, cliched set dressing of airships in a steampunk world. The characters we follow most closely are two teenagers, both 15 at most, who have grown up in this world and have their own journeys and aspirations, revolving around the features of the world. Our protagonist, Matt Cruse, is an able-bodied member of the cruise ship Aurora's crew, living on and caring for the airship as his home, both physically and emotionally. He stays close to the ship so that he may also stay close to the memory of his lost father, who he loved so much that, upon his loss, Matt feared being away from his father's airship, lest he become overcome with grief and loss. Our deuteragonist, Kate DeVry, is a passenger on one of the Aurora's cruises, who, while born into high society and privileged with access to knowledge and education, is denied her aspiration to follow the inspiration of her own grandfather, which is to discover the wonders of the natural world. She goes on the Aurora to try and get closer to her own lost family, and found a friend in Matt. Both our leads are young teens who are very much masters of their own domain, at least in their own minds. Matt being at home on an airship and intimately understanding the mechanisms and dynamics of the vessel and crew, and Kate, well-read and confident in her knowledge and ability to seek out, interact with, and study the natural world. And both are driven by the memory of someone they loved and lost, to be as close to them as possible. Matt through living on and maintaining the airship Aurora, and Kate through following her grandfather's path to find the beautiful creatures he discovered in his final days. When I was a teenager and reading this story for the first time, I myself hoped to be so comfortable in my knowledge and intimate mastery of whatever my domain would be, as they were. What I didn't necessarily fully understand then, as I feel I do now, is that even these characters, standing comfortable in their own familiar spaces, still have growing up to do. Despite his confidence and seeming fearless disposition, Matt Cruse really is still a really young man in mourning. He hasn't really gotten over the loss of his father, and as his coping mechanism is centered around staying with the airship Aurora, if any opportunity came that could better his life and family, it would undoubtedly be a hard decision to leave while still keeping the memory of his father close. It also doesn't help that in his socioeconomic position, a working-class boy in a high-risk profession, taking any risk that could backfire and leave him and his family worse off is a major disincentive. Despite her confidence and drive to discover new wonders of the natural world, Kate DeVry is also still a really young woman who has yet more to learn about people and their disposition. And it's more than a simple lack of awareness that causes her to miss the triggers of other people's distress and decisions. In her privileged upbringing, through no fault or credit of her own, mind you, She's probably used to influencing activities in her domain to positive outcomes by nature of her status as the daughter of wealthy, influential parents. It just so happens that her domain isn't really so expansive and not where she wants to be. Imagine being the master of the interior of a gilded cage. Kate aspires to discovery and recognition for said discoveries as well, and since society has declared these outside her domain, she must search for opportunity to break out of the cage. Yet it also means that factors outside the influence of her name and status aren't immediately clear to her as well, and may well don't matter very greatly, at least until matters become much more dire. She hopes to have free rein to find and exploit opportunity at her convenience, when far greater circumstances may rightly demand that she be reined in, as it were. Both characters are, in certain ways, naive and lacking perspective of their inexperience. It is only in this story of their adventure together do they get help in growing up. The adventure forces Matt, who thought himself at ease in the world from the comfort of his airship, outside his airship home, to discover the very means to save his imperiled home. When the pirates caused the crash of the Aurora, only by leaving the Aurora to accompany Kate on her quest did he find the secret to saving his airship home from being grounded forever, the deposit of lifting gas on the island. It also forces Matt to find connection to someone outside the safe, familiar space that is his airship home and Cruse family. While living safe on the Aurora, he thought it was enough to see the world and its wonders from his high perch, living and experiencing what he did when his late father told him his stories. But time and probability demanded that, sooner or later, Matt would have to go out of his familiar space to make his own discoveries and find his own stories, even if it was just to accompany a headstrong young passenger. Matt originally wants to become sailmaker, then eventually captain the Aurora, because his original goal is to get as close as possible to keeping the Aurora airborne forever. But it was never going to be enough for Matt to remain on the Aurora forever, as part of her crew forever, just to forever hold on to his late father's memory. He would eventually need to branch out to find his own space, expand his knowledge beyond his comfort zone, and find new people to connect with, lest he be rendered irrelevant and stagnant with time and age. If he came anywhere near this goal, it would have left him in isolation, because no one could stay with him forever, and without a reason to spread out beyond his boundaries, he'd have no one and nothing to live for, eventually not even himself. By finding Kate and accompanying her outside the Aurora, only then could he start to confront his hidden grief, acknowledge it, and start to heal, and then grow outside his old boundaries and his old skin. Reading this story again so long after my own teenage years speaks to me because, in my youth, one of my highest aspirations was to find a way to fly, and to go on flying, so that I could make my home the sky, or the whole world. It took me this long to realize that such a dream is hollow if it leaves one isolated and lonely. I could only see the act of accomplishing such great endeavors as I dreamed of in my youth as worthwhile if someone else could find value in them. The adventure likewise forces Kate, who thought herself at the cusp of validating her grandfather's memory, and earning respect for herself beyond her status as a lady, to confront the various external threats and pressures that keep people from risk-taking and adventuring in general. Despite how fantastic her quest to find the beautiful creatures her grandfather wrote of before he died, she is proven correct in story and seems validated in her goals and methods. As part of the journey to find evidence of her discovery, she faces the same perils as Matt, and by extension, the crew and passengers of the Aurora. Caught up in the same dangers of piracy, stranded on an island unknown to anyone in civilization, and far from help. At first, her knowledge of flora and fauna is enough to assist in survival, and is even rightly lauded if it were useful outside the written scenes. Where she falls short, and has to learn to recognize her shortcomings, is in dealing with danger, both expected and unexpected. Until her start in this adventure, her knowledge came from a place of safety, where she didn't yet before have to brave both hostile nature and hostile people. As written, the island and its common wildlife were harmless enough, but she possibly ended up with a false sense of security when coming face to face with her great discovery, the living and very much predatory and powerful Cloud Cat, that had been left grounded since birth and had grown into a dangerous wild animal. The wonder of finding what her grandfather found blinded her to the practical assumption that, as a wild animal, it would be inclined either to run or attack when caught off guard. And when their lives are in mortal danger, all other academic consideration is rendered moot. Additionally, in placing themselves in such a perilous position, Kate and her compatriots are forced into yet more peril when they run into the pirates that force them to crash land, and whose incentive is to kill everyone and hide their island from the world. Unlike an animal whose deadliness may be more obvious, the danger of the pirates is even more insidious, because in trying to survive with Matt and Kate playing the part of shipwrecked passengers, the pirates also play the game of determining their threat to their secret island home. In the overall story, the pirates incite the incident that drives the story from the start, from trying to down Kate's grandfather's balloon, leading to his brief rescue by Matt, and Kate's pursuit of his path later. But upon Kate's pursuit of her Cloud Cat, irrespective of the Aurora's readiness to leave the island unharmed, the same pursuit eventually incites the pirates to nearly doom them again. While it is for dramatic effect that the characters' actions, ranging from both mundane or flawed, can drive the story in a chain of events that can occur in ever more unlikely ways, the importance of this is that Kate's drive to her goals can be seen to cause harm and needless danger to others around her, and that facing the dangers is easy when they're abstract and distant, and a great deal more difficult when directly faced. Like any of us as youth, we'd very much like to think that we can rise to the occasion and face danger with bravery and cool intelligence. The tragedy is that it takes undeniable loss to realize we are not equal to facing the mortal danger. Kate was herself willing to try fighting the pirates, probably in the same way she herself might have been regaled when told stories of fights between heroes and villains, but this would have certainly gotten herself and her friends killed. Whereas before, Kate took the lead heedless of greater context that others recognized, only by the end, when she listened and trusted her friends, could she contribute to their collective effort to survive their greatest dangers. Matt and Kate are central to the ethos of the story that invokes wonder and the will to discover. At the same time, while both characters are in some ways at the inspirational height of their respective passions, they manage to avoid the easy pitfall of becoming arrogant and unopen to gaining new knowledge. As reward for their journey together, they gain new friendship. Matt's knowledge and love of airships and flying is endearing, and all the more so because when he meets Kate, he truly wants to share in the wonders of his world with her, a total stranger at first. I myself relate to this because of how much I've learned and want to share in the wonder of it all. And when he accompanies Kate on her journey over the island, instead of being condescending or belittling her, he offers, at first reluctantly, his own expertise in navigation and validates her quest for discovery by helping her find the Cloud Cat, the beautiful creatures her grandfather wanted to show her. I wouldn't be surprised if, in helping Kate find the Cloud Cat, he recognized that he was restoring Kate's late beloved grandfather to her, the same way he kept close his late beloved father by working and living on his airship Aurora. Kate's knowledge of the natural world and will to adventure and discovery is also endearing, because her passion was inspired by her late grandfather, and yet also reflected in her view of Matt. When Kate met Matt, she recognized his love of flight and the wonders it allowed him to witness, and when she learned of his interaction with her grandfather, it helped her recognize his sympathy to another reveling in discovery. Even to an old man speaking seeming nonsense on his deathbed. When Matt was showing her his world, she had no trouble reveling in its wonders as well as he. And when they were stuck on the island, while Kate went searching, she never left out Matt of her discoveries, even when she seemed to think briefly in the beginning that she didn't need him. Confident without arrogance, and inclusive. In some ways, Matt and Kate were like this not just for each other's benefit, but for the audience as well. For myself, it worked wonders. Despite their professed and implied knowledge and confidence therein, Kate and Matt both show their willingness for advancing their knowledge of the world, whether it's airships and their operation, or the natural world and scientific study. In universe, aspiring airship crew members study at the famed Airship Academy, and despite Matt's dismissiveness of the alleged aloof stuffiness of Academy students, he himself recognizes the value of the education and the credit that comes with it. In many ways, it reflects the real-life hope, such as my own, that the key to fitful employment in a field you are passionate about would be best served by earning a college degree in your field, so that you may be taken on as a professional. Meanwhile, Kate hopes to make her discovery into her own ticket into a higher education or academic setting. It's not specified in the story, but she may have aspirations to an institution or society that is roughly equivalent or is the mentioned zoological society. Her aspirations may go as high as writing studies on flora and fauna, organizing expeditions to discover and document new habitats and the wildlife therein, or investigating sightings of strange new creatures and natural phenomena. It certainly plays into a fantasy of growing up to become important in the field of your passions, whatever that really entails. The inspiration would be such that no amount of tedium or mundane activity could ever dampen that passion. For a young reader like myself, this aspect of the character's aspirations validated my own. Part of the fun of the story is how it revolves around a novel mode of transportation, the airship Aurora. In my personal experience, there's not too many stories that involve an intimate understanding of the vehicle conveying the hero or heroes, unless it's part of their style or branding. And where airships are concerned, they're often relegated to background set dressing, to portray the world as other and unique, actually to the point where it's become a cliché hardly worth expanding on. Instant steampunk, just add airships. Part of the fun I found in reading Opel's Airborn is that the airship setting isn't simply an interchangeable backdrop, but actually is portrayed as a vessel for the characters, both the main and the background characters. In my youth, just having the story revolve around an airship or other unique mode of transport might well have been adventure enough. But growing up means recognizing that there can't be a story without people using those wondrous vehicles, craft, and vessels to affect the story. Think about other popular stories we consume regularly. Just for common examples, in Star Trek, what is the Enterprise without the main crew? In Star Wars, what would be the Millennium Falcon without our heroes on their journey? And in James Bond, what are the cars and gadgets without the secret agent themselves? These are all implements and extensions of the characters, both individual and ensemble, and I believe we as readers and watchers can grow attached as well, because we can imagine them as our extensions as well. In this story, the Aurora and her crew make up Matt Cruse's home and family, respectively, and the crew provides Matt's emotional support and give him comfort with their trust and encouragement. Alas, even they perform more unique roles in the story, more than just filling out a roster for our hero to interact with. Of note, we have the Captain Walken, the fellow crewmate Baz, and the newcomer Bruce Lunardi, all occupying Matt's thoughts and feelings the most in the story. Captain Walken is the easiest to understand, as he is the father figure to both Matt and the crew, providing authority, guidance, and encouragement, and is involved in the same trials and tribulations as everyone under his command. In many ways, he is the view of an ideal leader, at least to a young idealistic mind such as Matt's, and even myself when first reading. While on the surface level this is enough for an admirable character, taking the larger perspective of his role as captain of his airship, his interests are not really fully aligned with what Matt needs in story. Captain Walken employed Matt's father on the Aurora, and when he died, took on Matt as well, no doubt appreciating the boy's enthusiasm for where his father worked and got all his wonderful stories. Of course, being a parental figure doesn't stop at rewarding favor, and despite the admiration he's rightly earned from Matt and the crew, Walken can't actually be the father replacement Matt may wish, because Walken isn't really interested in giving Matt what he needs to overcome his suppressed grief and grow out from it. Walken runs an airship for the cruise line, and the safe operation of the cruise and safe conveyance of the passengers really take precedence over the parenting needs of the crew's youngest member. Walken might well assume that all the parenting Matt needed was taken care of either before Matt signed on to the Aurora, or in the brief time between voyages where Matt is home with his mother and his sisters. Of course, as it's written, we can figure out that that's not true, so without another way for Matt to get what he needs, reconciliation with his loss, as opposed to what he wants, to fly away from his troubles forever, Walken actually would be holding Matt back, even if he could validate Matt's desires via promotion up to and including the highest ranks of the Aurora's flight crew. I never would have guessed the first time I read this story that a genuinely admirable character could actually be a valid obstacle to our hero's journey. Crewmate Baz is another family surrogate to Matt, this time the older brother he never had, and is also in some ways idealized as such. He shares the same roles and burdens as Matt, takes things in stride with humor where helpful, and often succeeds at raising Matt's spirits, while serving on their shared home Aurora. However, even Baz too can be considered an obstacle to Matt's journey to growing up. We hear little of Baz's life outside the Aurora, we just know for certain he has a fiancée waiting for him at their voyage's destination. So we can infer that Baz at least has a budding relationship that's progressing to the point where he can support a family of his own. As much as we might imagine how Baz might integrate Matt into his new family, apart from the crew as family of the Aurora, we know from the story that Baz isn't actually interested in preparing Matt for life beyond serving aboard Aurora. If Baz's new status as husband were to take him away from the Aurora and leave Matt behind, we don't actually know how well Matt would adapt to this. We don't see Matt interact with other crew in a similar, familiar way as he does with Baz. Additionally, Baz isn't necessarily aware of Matt's need to mature and expand his social interactions with anyone outside the crew and his distant family back in Lionsgate City. When Matt starts becoming closer to Kate, Baz may tease Matt at the idea of their young love. His more serious concern is that Matt is not undone by his interaction with Kate. As we've seen, and can infer, however, without Kate, Matt wouldn't have confronted his own hidden grief, wouldn't have found the thing that saves his home Aurora from destruction, and wouldn't have sought the new opportunity that allows him to grow up into his own, similar to how Baz probably did outside the story. While Baz adopting Matt as his little brother is admirable, it appears that keeping that role could have held Matt back, when what he really needed was to be pushed forward into his own actualization. another likable character that is no less an obstacle to Matt's journey. The final character of note I want to point out is the presumed rival that comes into Matt Cruse's domain, the son of a rich industrialist, Bruce Lunardi. It would have been trivially easy to make Bruce an antagonist to Matt. Even Matt himself expected, maybe wanted, and certainly would have been validated if Bruce were crass, abrasive, arrogant, ignorant, and everything short of a physical menace to Matt's home and family. Instead, what we get is someone full of self-doubt, inexperience, and only just starting to push their boundaries. In story, his only crime, as it were, was to deny Matt's promotion to junior sailmaker. But Bruce serves as an interesting contrast to Matt, and seems to play a role in Matt's journey growing up. Bruce is the son of the industrialist Lunardi, who owns the manufacturer and cruise line that the airship Aurora serves, but who himself is not certain of his own worth, apart from that of his father. As written, Bruce's father expects him to develop knowledge or skills in a field of his own choosing, but Bruce, who presumably has access to all kinds of resources based on his father's wealth and stature, doesn't know what he wants. So his father chose for him. Bruce was placed onto the Aurora, coming into conflict with Matt's ambition for promotion, and for the story, not only has to learn to get comfortable working on an airship, but also develop a functional working relationship with the crew, including a resentful Matt. Bruce's disposition is a familiar one from my time in middle and high school. While I myself was certain of what I wanted to learn and excel in, I was made aware of many my age who weren't certain what to make of themselves, even if I never learned the full implications of such a disposition. In the story, Bruce shows that not everyone who gets the things that we want and presumably deprive us the same are necessarily bad people. They can be worthwhile friends, too, if given the chance. However, there's more to Bruce's role in Matt's journey than the obstacle Matt presumes him to be. Thanks to a jealousy born of the anxieties of Matt's working-class upbringing, Matt might have seen Bruce as replacement for his position on the Aurora, so Matt is driven to best Bruce in their encounters, at least at first. During the Aurora's emergency landing, Matt proved himself the superior crew member to Bruce, but it was during their escapades together with Kate that Matt got the push he needed to rise to the occasion. While Bruce seemingly presumed to earn his way into Kate's good graces, only Matt proved equal to understanding and validating Kate's drive for discovery and achieving her own ambitions. While Matt's defensiveness and insecurity of his lower-class background might be considered a flaw of his character, it made him a stronger character by driving Matt to be a better friend to Kate than the higher-class Bruce could hope to be. When Kate sought the Cloud Cat, and Matt and Bruce were sent to retrieve her, and the Cloud Cat's danger threatened them all, it was Matt's drive to help them all survive that allowed him to help Bruce survive, save Kate, and eventually reunite them all again for the finale. As contrast, imagine the alternative. If Bruce's involvement made Matt withdraw from his budding friendship with Kate, he might have instead run away to save himself, maybe successfully, but leaving Bruce and Kate likely to die. If not to the Cloud Cat, then to the pirates, and by extension, the Aurora and everyone else on her. Bruce may very well be the version of Matt that got everything he wanted without obstacle, but when pushed out of their comfort zone would fail to rise to the challenge presented by mortal danger. The combination of Bruce's presumed threat and Matt's insecurities pushed Matt to become stronger by story's end, even trusting Bruce to help them survive the final stretch. Now I come to the Aurora, the one thing that anchors the story and the characters for their journey. While it remains true that the Aurora can only be an extension of the characters that interact with her, she nonetheless adds her own presence to Opel's written world and the world of the point-of-view character, Matt Cruse. Like any vessel worthy of name and remembrance, Aurora demands a great deal of time and attention to make her work in her world, but in return she provides the home for the characters, makes their journeys possible, and must be protected if they're to survive the danger that comes their way. Before I could understand the full implication of such a vessel, fictitious though she is, in my youth I only knew best to appreciate the presence of a majestic airship through the technical description made up for her existence. This was to be appreciated by me, as a young reader, by comparison to similar airships in our real world and history, but that wouldn't measure up to the Aurora's wondrous dimensions, as written. Reading my story again many years later helps me appreciate that what is not important is the written fictional dimensions, specifications, and technical details of the fictitious vessel. What's important is that it contains the character's world and draws their attention and inspires their sympathy and care. Like the saying goes, be it ever so humble, there is no place like home. Same goes for the literal vessel of your world, sense of home and family. If it weren't the Aurora, or if the Aurora were not a glamorous cruise liner, the story might still work, if it could bring the characters and story together just the same. That leaves open the possibility of other airships being literal vessels for other stories of people living their lives and plying their trade over the open skies. However much you may marvel at the airship Aurora, or sympathize with Matt's view of Aurora in-universe, she is not unique. In fact, many other airships are observed, implied, or mentioned throughout the story. And the fact that Aurora is not unique helps make Opel's written world all the more immersive and inviting. With each mentioned airship, there can be implied a great range of ideas about the world and people living and working therein. In no particular order, we have the Aurora, joined by other cruise liners and cargo ships taking their turns at dock in the Lionsgate City Aerodrome. We have the giant balloon that held Kate's grandfather for his attempt at flying around the world. We have mentioned passenger carriers, whose mid-cruise provisions for the passengers leave much to be desired. No doubt a dig at modern airlines not serving food mid-flight. And also mentioned are skyliners that transport people en masse, such as for immigration, like the one that took Matt's family to the New World. We have the pirates' own small, agile, and explicitly armed airship, and airships used by the Sky Guard that may be similarly equipped. Some of these mentioned airship types can lend themselves more easily to certain stories depending on your taste and your conception of the crews as characters going through their own journeys. I personally can imagine cargo haulers trying to make quotas and deliveries on time while hounded by circumstance and rivalries. Pioneers trying to set records by making meticulous flight plans and finding provisions needed. Families making difficult journeys to new places to start lives anew. Pirates themselves trying to survive by preying on civilian air traffic without getting hurt while so far removed from the protection of lawful society, and police or military crews trying to maintain safety and lawful conduct in the shipping lanes and ports. Any story that can elaborate on airships as an integral part of daily life was always an attractive prospect for me personally, and I can only hope that there are more yet written that might take inspiration from Kenneth Opel's Airborn world. Of course, there's also a great deal to enjoy about the story itself, the progression from the ordered, scheduled entertainment of a fancy cruise that the reader may only dream of, followed by the twist of peril by flying pirates, to the thrill of landing on an uncharted island that intrigues for what mysteries it may hold, and then a daring escape. For me, the combination was such that I would never fail to be hooked and reading continuously to the very end. Even when reading it again today, I still feel the suspense and can't look away. As we're introduced to the regular type of cruise the Aurora and her crew organize, it very clearly invokes the glamour of airship travel as presented in our history's early 20th century flight. The fantasy and fun is in the luxurious accommodations, such as with freshly made high-quality meals, as well as relaxed entertainment in a bar or a lounge that provides the panoramic view of the world slowly moving past hundreds of feet below. As written, it is very much the kind of luxury that men and women of high class would expect and pay for in a setting roughly analog to our 1920s and 30s. There are other forms of entertainment mentioned, such as a cinema and presumably more musical concert, but as our character's story is far more important, these get pushed to the background. The perilous twist in our story's Cruse that drives our characters to more adventure is the arrival of the air pirates. Like in old pirate stories from the Age of Sail, these pirates mean business from the start. They mean to board the airship, overtake the crew, and take precious valuables off the hands of the hapless passengers. They're threatening, efficient, and their leader is intimidating and notorious in his own unique way, with a reputation to uphold. Reading the story again years later, I now recognize in the pirate leader Spearglass an image of our hero Matt Cruse's future if he tried and succeeded in achieving a never-ending life in flight away from civilization. Spearglass has his own ship, his own crew, and, as seen later, his own family and community to care for, that contrasts greatly with his ruthless methods and threatening disposition. After threatening the airship crew and passengers for their personal valuables, while also leaving one of the crew dead, the pirates depart, and for many, this would be a traumatic adventure enough on its own. But the danger is not over yet. A storm comes and surprises everyone, and while it itself may not be bad enough to imperil the Aurora, the pirates prove to be the threat yet again, when by sheer circumstance they collide with and damage the Aurora, to the point that it can no longer fly, with no safe place to land in the middle of the ocean. Despite making safe emergency landing on an uncharted island, the pirates are still a threat, because they themselves inhabit that same island just a short flight away from the Aurora's landing site. And like criminals whose very survival likely depends on the secrecy of their base, they proceed to capture the Aurora and make plans to kill the crew and passengers, to leave no one any clue as to their fate. The uncharted island in the middle of the ocean is a classic setting for an adventure, especially after a ship is grounded or wrecked. The island is characteristically lush, with fruit-bearing trees and greenery, while filled with reptiles, insects, and birds, all colorful, alive, and generally fit for the idea of an exotic tropical island. The seeming impenetrable darkness and atmosphere of mystery at first seems only to conceal dangerous creatures, until a more intimate familiarity reveals the discovery of a new creature, first the bones and then the living specimen of the cloud cats. Alas, the familiarity with the wilderness yet again conceals danger, as, under a false sense of security, Matt and Kate pursue a close encounter with the cloud cat and subsequently are endangered by the wild animal. Additionally, with both sustenance and danger sheathed in the greenery, the island also holds the key to the survival of Aurora and her crew and passengers, with the discovery of the open deposit of lifting gas that can be extracted and used to lift the airship again, and escape the island. With the recovery of the airship's airworthiness, the only danger to our character's survival is the other, more dangerous residents of the island, the pirates. There is a point where, after our characters are captured, placed in, and escape a death trap, that they return to the Aurora, and it's taken over by pirates. There really is no choice now but to leave the island no matter what. The moment the rest of the pirates reach the Aurora, there will be no chance of survival. Our heroes have to release the airship from the island and end the pirate threat on board before the pirates start killing everyone. Unbeknownst to them, the danger of the island has also followed them aboard before the launch, so our heroes have to contend with both pirates and the Cloud Cat that can attack them just as easily, even outside the jungle. Only with our heroes' comprehensive knowledge of the airship, the paths within that lead around the pirates, and the resources on board do they have a chance of besting the pirates and surviving the adventure. Succeeding against heavily armed and violent pirates to take back the Aurora and return to the safety of civilization is a just reward for the close understanding our characters have of the airship itself. After surviving the adventure, both Matt and Kate get even more justly earned rewards. Because of his efforts in defeating the pirates, Matt gets the chance and ability to literally and figuratively expand his horizons by attending the Airship Academy, no longer needing to remain tethered to the Aurora to keep the loving memory of his father alive. Meanwhile, Kate gets her just recognition for her successful efforts to document and recover evidence of a newly discovered creature, validating her grandfather's loving memory and opening up more opportunity to explore her profession and develop her passion for natural study. More importantly, our heroes get something more than the validation of their knowledge, the survival of their perilous journey, and the opportunity to expand upon their personal ambitions. Now, neither has to do it alone. They have each found in the other a kindred spirit with whom to share in their journey yet to come.